In this video, I will show you how to create this 8-bit pixel art just like I did in the last video. I got a lot of people that were asking how did you did that? And I actually did a full 2-hour deep dive on my video. If you want to see this, then do join my masterclass community in which I will show you this deep dive, but also more in-depth editing lessons, sales lessons, live Q&As, and a community that really wants to help out. Again, a link is in the description and let's jump into it. We're in ChatGPT because I've used ChatGPT to create a character. And of course, there's more ways to do this. You can also use other AI tools. There's quite a lot of pixel art generators nowadays. I've tried multiple, Midjourney, but also some public websites, and I got the best results out of ChatGPT. But if you don't have ChatGPT, then do test out other websites too. As you can see, it does generate some different results in the beginning. And the thing you need to search for is 8-bit pixel art. So I had to refine this a bit. Here I give more like a descriptive text of the image. So 8-bit pixel art of a guy with dark blonde hair, with blue eyes, Caucasian, wearing a black turtleneck. If you're gonna create something of yourself or of your client, then you do need to describe some characteristics. Now I like this image, but it didn't really look like me, especially because of the beard. So I scrolled down. The smell was a bit weird, but at the end of the day, I also didn't like this one. So I did went with the weird smell, and it does look really friendly. That's really nice to see too. So the last one I was really happy with. So now that we have our image, we're gonna go to Photoshop, and I'm gonna do that by just right-clicking our image, copy image, and then we're just gonna open Photoshop. Now, of course, you don't have to use Photoshop. You can also use any background remover tool, but I just really like the object selection tool in Photoshop because we can now just select our image. It will just automatically create this selection. We can press the mask tool and it will add a mask and key out our background. Now, as you can see, there are some artifacts in the center. If you really want to, you can adjust this by, for example, going into the rectangle tool, then selecting a part and then going into the fill. And I'm going to set it to foreground color and it will fill it with the foreground color. So you have to select your foreground color to this chin here. Set OK. Again, go to fill, then foreground color, and it will fill it. I'm not going to do this with this image because I'm going to use it from like really far away anyway, so it will blend in. But if you want to do this, you can do this. Now make sure the background is set off and then go to File, Export, Quick Export as PNG. Now let's jump into After Effects. I already have a video imported just as a background layer, and I already have the PNG imported. If you don't know how to do this, you can just double click here and import the PNG. Let's just drag this in and maybe put it around here. And as you can see, it's a bit too big. So I'm going to press S to scale this down a bit, something like this. And let's move this a bit. Also make sure you have the selection tool selected. And I like it around here. I'm going to press P for position, set a keyframe. Let's go to the start and let's move this down by holding Shift. There we go. Then select all the keyframes, hit F9 or right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. Go into the graph editor, select the last keyframe and let's drag this out so it's really smooth. Just like this. I really like that. Now I do want to enable motion blur too to really finish this effect. You don't have to, but I think it adds something to it. So make sure that this motion blur icon is selected and this motion blur icon is selected at the top. Let's go out of our graph editor. Now I want to add a subtle shadow just so we get the attention more to the bottom. And I'm gonna do that by going to Layer New Solid, making it black. Let's press OK. Then go into the rectangle tool and you do this by holding your mouse down on this tool. Now let's drag out our mask to something like this. Let's press F for feather and set this to maybe 800. There we go. We get this really nice subtle shadow. Let's go to the selection tool and double click on our mask and we can even adjust our mask. You can also just adjust the position of the whole layer, but maybe to something like this. And then we can also go to T for transparency, set a keyframe, and let's drag this down a bit so it's a bit less heavy. And let's go to the beginning and let's set this to 0% so it fades in. Now make sure our pixel art is above our shadow. Now if we now play it, we already have quite a cool animation, but I do want to add a couple of things. Of course, I want to add the chat box and I also want the pixel art to be moving. As you can see, it's now quite static. It's just standing here and I don't want that. First, gonna just do that by going to Effects and Preset and then going into Wiggle Position. So just search Wiggle and double click once you have the pixel art selected. Now the standard settings are quite fine, but if you want to, you can adjust this. So wiggle speed is the speed of the wiggle, and the wiggle amount is how much it wiggles. If we now play it, as you can see, there's some movement in it, so it's a bit more organic. Now let's create our chat box, and I'm gonna do that by holding our mouse down on our shape tool and going into the rounded rectangle tool. Make sure your fill is set to white and your stroke is set to 10 pixels. Now let's just drag this out, something like this, and make sure your roundness is set to 20 here in the properties panel. If you don't see this property panel, please update your After Effects. Now let's just zoom in a bit, hold your space bar down to move this around, and I'm gonna add a little arrow at the bottom. Now you might wonder how to do this, because normally if you go to the pen tool and you try to add a point, that doesn't work. You need to first change this rectangle path. So right click on, so open this shape layer, open the rectangle, and right click on rectangle path, press convert to Bezier path, and now we can add points to our path. So we just add a point here, add a point here, and add a point here. We can then select this middle point and drag this out. We can even drag it here, drag it there, whatever you want. And the funny thing is, we can do this with any shape that is in this tool. Not a lot of people know this. You can just go to the ellipse tool, for example, and drag this out. Let's hold shift, then go into the ellipse, right click on the ellipse, convert to Bezier path, just like we did before. Let's zoom in. And if we now go into this path and click on the path, and let's go into our selection tool, we can select this left point and adjust it. And not only that, we can even keyframe this. So we can even set a keyframe on the path, move this out, select this left point, maybe drag it out like this. You know what? Drag the other points to the center too, like this. And we now just got a square that turns into a circle, which I think is a handy effect to know how to do. I'm just gonna delete this ellipse, and we're gonna do the same thing with our chat box. So I'm just gonna go into the path and set a keyframe. Let's drag this out and make sure the selection tool is selected. And you can just drag these to the left, and if you hold shift, they will stay straight. And what we can do is just drag them here, maybe to something like this. There we go. So we have our first keyframe. Let's drag our keyframe out a bit, and let's select the top, and let's drag this in. And now what we can even do is like make it really tiny. But what I'm gonna do is just press S for scale, set a keyframe, make sure our anchor point is set to the bottom of our shape. So let's go to the pen behind anchor tool. Let's move this to the bottom. If we now scale this, so let's drag this keyframe out a bit and scale this, we can make it disappear. We can set this to 0%. Now press U to see all of our keyframes and press V for our selection tool. And basically what we just did is it scales up first, and it scales to the top, and then it scales to the right. Now, of course, it's not perfect yet. I'm gonna select all our keyframes and hit F9. And I'm also gonna make sure that our motion blur is set on. Let's play this. And this is already really cool. Of course, we can change the timing a bit, something like this. Maybe make this go a bit quicker. And I really love that. Now let's link this to our pixel art to make sure that this is completely disappeared before. Then we can drag this chat box a bit earlier, and that's really cool. Now what you might have noticed is that the chat box is not really pixel art yet. That's what we're gonna do first in After Effects. So there's this really cool effect that's called mosaic. We can just add that to it. We can just double click while having our shape selected, and as you can see, it creates this really crazy effect. Now of course we need to increase the horizontal blocks, basically increasing the resolution, and maybe setting this to 150 by 150, just seeing what that looks like. And that already works, but it's not perfect. It's a bit blurry. So for example, we can turn on the sharp colors. That's a way to do it. Or what we can do is just increase the horizontal blocks by a lot. So once you set this really high to like 300, it will become less blurry, as you can see, and that will really add something to the effect. What can happen is that on the side, it's not aligned well, as you can see here. So you might have to increase the horizontal blocks to 301 to make it better, or 302. Just play around with this. I think 302 works better in this case. So we already get this pixelated effect. Now let's create the text. I'm just gonna go to the text tool, and let's just drag our mouse over this. So we have a text box, something like that. I'm gonna use the font Retro Gaming. And if we now type something here, we already have this really cool retro effect. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to effects and preset. I'm going to use the typewriter with blinking cursor. You can also just use the typewriter effect. Basically what this does is it will add a effect to it where it's like typing something, and it will also add a blinker cursor. I think it's a really cool effect that's just built into After Effects. Now we can even change the cursor type here. I'm not going to do that for now. I'm just going to press U to see our keyframes, and I'm going to make sure the timing is correct. So basically when this is popped up, it also starts typing. Ideally, I want this together with the chat box, so it's a bit like aligned. I think that's a cool effect. Now what the cool thing is, once we import a icon like this, I'm gonna scale this up. I'm just gonna go to extract to make sure that this white is keyed out. Then go to our shape layer, copy our mosaic and paste it on our coin. And what we can do now is set this to maybe 150 or maybe 150, let's see, or 100, or maybe even 40, scale it down. And once we make it smaller, we also want to decrease the horizontal blocks, so it becomes a bit more unsharp like that. And you can basically make pixel art quite easy by just using this mosaic effect. And then you get something like this. Do let me know what you want to see next. Don't forget to subscribe, because we're almost at 30k subscribers and I'm still gonna give away a Mac Mini. Thanks everyone for all the support, and then I'll see you next time. Bye.